Ahoy, ye salty swabs! You come looking for adventure and truth. Well, ye be in the right place. This is where we find it. Truth in movies, where we break down the esoteric symbolism as I see it. Today, we're talking about the movie Sea Beast. Welcome, everybody. This movie is going to cover one aspect from one perspective, and there are many. The ancient Fantazoids that have fallen from the sky, the sea monsters, the great beasts of old. One of my favorite subjects to talk about. One of you actually recommended this movie to me, said that I would love to watch this with my son, so I gave it a try. So if you ever think that the little things you do don't affect other people's lives and change the course of history, they do. This movie and this following breakdown is thanks to all of you for your recommendations. So let's jump into it. What's up, everybody in the chat? Good to see you. Huge thanks for all the support. Let's go ahead and check out The Sea Beast. This is on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can check it out. If you don't, kick back, grab some popcorn, and we'll watch it together. So the Sea Beast, this is going to be talking specifically about the time of the great beasts of old. And I mention this all the time on my channel. I call them Fantazoids, right? They're these otherworldly, monstrous sort of alien animal bug creatures sometimes, right? But there's different kinds of them. So we start the movie off, we've got some sort of a shipwreck and green light all over the place. When you see the green light, boom, you know that one of the symbols, one of the symbolic elements of the color green in movies is directing you to where you are on our map. Being the Aurora Borealis, basically, right? So somewhere near the North Pole, somewhere near the Arctic Circle, which is where this takes place. All right, so the sea goes down, or the ship goes down. You see all the green light everywhere from the auroras, the Aurora Borealis, which indicates near the North Pole, right? This person, I just took a lot of pictures so you can see the monster, how big these creatures were. We've got some big creatures in our world today. Elephants and whales and bears and stuff, lions, oh my. These creatures dwarf them in size. Not only did titans once walk this world, humanoid giants walking about, and not only will they return, but so will the great beasts of old. They're huge, they're gigantic, and I'm going to talk to you about a few theories I have on where they come from and what they are. So as you can see, this one's gigantic as it hurls through the northern ocean waters. And then we start our story off, right? We're inside of a children's home, as most good stories start off. With orphans, kids that have no parents. Symbolically, oftentimes this represents a post-apocalyptic event, and many people are left without their parents. And at the same time, many people retain their youth. If not, their youth is restored to them because the fountain of youth, or the blue beam that I speak often of, shoots up from the world, fills our world with energy, reinvigorates all forms of life. So we start off in this children's home, and as you can see up there, we've got the symbol, which I call the Tet. This is the Tet, actually, ancient Phoenician letter / number, right? This represents the 9, I believe, and this is also the symbol for the land that was once at the North Pole. So we've got these kids gathering together, listening to a good old bedtime story, right? One of those campfire stories that we tell, oddly enough, around Christmas time or Halloween. And she says, there was a time when children dreaded the night. Now, think about, if they're talking about children, let's just pretend like they're talking to us, all of you out there, whether you be youth or aged, right? We are all children compared to the long lifespans that we used to have. So this is us, basically, even though it's children, because we are a world full of youths and children. She says the dark times when those terrible sea beasts would come. And then it shows you some pictures, right? They would ravage our shores. And then it zooms into the book that she's reading. It's called The Tales of Captain Crow. Captain Crow is one of the protagonists of this movie. We're going to meet him here in just a bit. She says, but thanks to the hunters, those days are over, right? And you can see that they have the circle, right? And the spear. The circle, or the opening, a hole in our world, and then the spear representing that blue beam, that blue staff. I mean, I call it the blue beam. It could be all kinds of different colors. I'm not 100% sure, but there is energy inside of the earth that emanates outward every other cycle. And I believe that this cycle, I think that the movies often show us what cycle that we're looking at, or taking a glimpse into the past or the future or even the present, where we are in that cycle, whether it be in a blue sky about to enter the red sky, or in a red sky about to enter the blue sky. Sometimes they show the protagonist as trying to get to the North Pole, right? During the blue sky epic, which we're in right now, people try to get to the North Pole as a place of safety. But then they show you the red sky phenomenon too, where people at the North Pole are trying to leave. There's two different exoduses going on. So she says, today these valiant warriors battle the beasts far beyond the ocean, risking their lives to rid the seas of those nightmare creatures. And then this woman comes in, she holds up her hand. This is the lady that runs the place, and she's like, the king and queen will care for you, hunter orphans. You also notice this is the same exact way that BFG starts off, right? Remember we broke down BFG? Starts off inside of an orphanage, just like many other, Uncharted, I think, also started off with kids inside of an orphanage. And then she looks up and she says, the king and queen care for you, hunter orphans. So what they are is they're the orphans of those who would go out and search for the Fantazoids and kill them, right? Which I believe has a lot of truth to it. We're going to touch on that throughout the movie. The king and the queen care for you, hunter orphans. Okay. Out of their kindness. So this is the system, right? Trying to indoctrinate the youth, essentially, telling them that these people they've never met, they've never seen or anything, that keep them housed and separate under poor living conditions, care for them out of their kindness. On the other hand, you also have some symbolism here of the two witnesses, or Adam and Eve, on the left and the right of the image or the symbol for the North Pole, the place that is the center of the map. So this little girl can't take it. She doesn't like living in that system. She doesn't like to live under their rules. She represents a rebellious spirit, right? Somebody who is not rebellious in an evil, destructive kind of a way, but in a way that helps other people. She has the heart of an explorer. So she leaves this place through the North Pole symbol, or the Tet, as you can see there. It's just an X with a circle around it. So you can also see symbolically, it's almost like she's going through the hole in the sky at the same time, because the wall is white, which represents the roof of our world, which can be black or white, right? In all reality, it's white. However, it's very dark because it's a covering. So it's also seen as being black, or the black sky that you look up and see at night. So she goes through the hole, and that takes us to the title, Sea Beasts. So we're going to set out onto the waters. Now this right here is a huge clue of what epic we're in, right? Are we in the blue sky epic or the red sky epic? Sometimes it'll show you a blue sky, but they're actually in the red sky epic. So we have to figure it out. We can see the oceans, and much of this takes place on the oceans. They will either show you, typically, to know which apocalypse is being presented to you, or which era or epic is being presented to you. If there is an ocean, that's the blue sky typically, right? Whenever the sky turns blue, the rainbow comes out, we have weather and rain and all that fun stuff. But then if there's no ocean and it's more of like a desert world, or sometimes a swamp kind of a world, that is the red sky, basically. So we go to the Inevitable, which is basically a ship full of pirates. They don't call them pirates, but you can see how this is the beginnings and the makings of piracy, and which we're going to get into here in a bit too. So they're looking for this monster, this sea monster, this great beast of old, and they know where to find them. He says, it's dead ahead, Jacob. So this guy right here, this youthful lad, his name is Jacob. Now, keep in mind, the name Jacob, every name in every movie is a little piece of the puzzle. So if you can figure out what those names mean, you'll understand the deeper esoteric or occult message that's been given to you, aside from just being entertained by pictures on the screen. Jacob is an ancient name or word or descriptor that means one who takes the place of someone else, right? It's Yaakov in ancient Hebrew and modern Hebrew, or Jacovi. There's all kinds of renditions of Jacob, basically, but it means someone who takes the place of somebody else, right? Just like there will be those who survive the coming cataclysm, and they inherit the world, essentially. The world is theirs. They take the place of all those who died. There's also those who come down from the heavens and up from the inner earth, who also are seen as replacements for all of those people who have died during the polarity shift of our world. All right, then we meet the captain. This is going to be Captain Crow, we'll learn about, and he says, it's the Red Bluster. It's the Red Bluster. That's the name of the sea beast that they're looking for, is called the Red Bluster. Very interesting because they represent the red sky, as you can see, like the old world, basically. And this is a transitional movie. They're showing you a transition from one age or from one epic to another, right? How there's sort of a change in how things are handled. So he represents the old school, the old way of doing things. He's got the red sails and he's looking for the red bluster. And he says, it's been 30 years since that thing took me deadlight. So he calls his missing eye his deadlight, which is very interesting because when we study through plasma apocalypse symbolism, we understand that the deadlights are those lights that we see that come down from the sky to ground themselves during the polarity shift, which is plasma that's wrapped around our world. Usually red, which is why the red bluster is red. All right, so he says it's heading to the Dregmor Sea. So they're chasing this red beast, right? These are monster hunters. This thing that they're chasing is a Fantazoid. It is a giant monster creature because monsters are real. So what they're doing is they're showing us a real part of our history that is quickly fading into legend and myth and lore, and also lie, basically, by extension, right? So they say it's headed to the Dregmor Sea. So let's figure out what that means. Where's this monster going, right? It's headed to the Dregmor Sea, and it represents Fantazoids. So let's look up dregs, which is the root of Dregmor, right? Dreg means sediment. So they're going to an area of the sea that has a lot of sediment or sludge or mud, basically, right? A swampy area. Mur means swamp. It literally means swamp. So the place that they're going, now we have more context for what this means, what this place is. Some kind of a swampy area that has a lot of sediment. Now, I have discussed many times the different, the geography of the land at the North Pole as it once was understood commonly around the world, right? We have an island that's split by 4 rivers, and then on either side, there are other subsidiary islands, right? Each one has its own plasma volcano. If that's true, and if those have electrical discharge, when the middle one shoots up as well, it creates an electrical arc. Now they sit or they rest in salt water, which is our ocean water, which acts as an electrolyte, which means that this is a form of electrolysis, which powers and runs and refreshes our world, keeping it clean and stuff. And if that's true, and it's a form of electrolysis at the North Pole, but just on a huge scale, then naturally we would expect there to be sediment underneath at least one of these islands, right? Because that's what happens whenever you have an electrolysis system, is you have these two electric diodes, is that what they're called? Anyways, these 2 beams that produce electricity, right? And underneath, what's happening is one is borrowing, I think it's electrons or elements. I'm not too versed in it. I'm still studying it. But it takes away from one mountain and it gives it to the other, basically. Or from one electrode and gives it to the other, which means that there's an excess and there's a buildup of this sludge that falls down off of it, which is where we get dregs or sediment from, right? So they're going to this place that is full of sediment. This ocean is basically a mud ocean. It's basically full of muddy, swampy sediment. All right. He says, drive her down, Mr. Crisp. As you can see, they're going to go into the fog now, right? Which I don't know if this is really fog or if that's supposed to be smoke from the cannon blasts and whatnot. But symbolically, you have the fog monsters that the pirates of old would battle, or the armadas from various armies. They would battle these creatures that were in the fog. Fog monsters are, this is what I call them, is the fog monsters, because when our world depressurizes, it instantly pulls apart our atmosphere and there's mist everywhere. Fog, thick fog all over the place that's tainted red, typically, because the sky itself turns red. We can see the plasma on the other side. Instead of the light shining down in our eyes, we can see what's beyond it, which means that the whole sky turns red. So this fog is a red fog on top of everything, typically. Here in the movie, they're not showing it as red, which is okay, but they show you that there are that's when the monsters come. When you see the world full of smoke and fog and mist and stuff, that's when you're going to have these gigantic Fantazoid monstrous creatures all around the world. Now, is that a scary thought? Yeah, of course, if you're surrounded by monsters, but just because they're monsters or just because they're aliens does not mean they are all evil. It does not mean they're all trying to bite you, sting you, they're out to get you, or whatever. But does that mean that they're all friendly? No, it doesn't, right? It's just like animals here on Earth. All right, so you can see that they go into the fog and boom! Oh, I forgot about that. They actually do light it up red. So, wow, that's a good surprise for me. So they shoot out these red lights in order to attract the Fantazoid, because the Fantazoids are attracted. That's when they show up, is when there's fog and it's red, usually. Sometimes it's just fog. So symbolically, they're showing you the apocalypse, or symbolic elements of the apocalypse, right? And you can see that it does attract this creature, right? It's not the red bluster. They actually left the red bluster to go help out that other guy, that other boat that was in trouble. And they were running from this monster right here. Now look at this. This is a cartoonification, right? This is an artist who's tapping into the ether or has esoteric knowledge, that he's uncovered. Either way, this is not an exact photograph, right? It's just an artist's rendition of these great beasts of old. Now, if you take enough artist renditions over and over and over across history, worldwide, thousands upon thousands of artist renditions of what sea beasts look like, you're going to start to see a similar pattern. You're going to start to see things that match up, which is called comparative mythology. That's one way that we can reverse engineer the true history of our world. So they start leaning over the ship with their spears. They're going to try to take it out with some spears. We're going to talk about the spear symbolism, or the sacred arrow. It goes by many different things. All right, so they're leaning across. They're getting ready to do battle with the great Fantazoid. Look at this thing's back, right? I know it's a cartoon, right? But if it's a cartoon or movie or whatever that represents symbolically very real elements like this type of a creature, look at its potential. Look at, how do you fight something like that? Look, it's basically born with armor to protect it from humans, right? I mean, it might be armor, or it might just act as natural forms of armor, right? And then you can see that there's birds that land on it and stuff too. You can crack its armor. Now, by watching these movies, if this event happens again, which I believe it will, believe it or not, you're probably more informed by watching these types of movies, if this is your cup of tea, right? And you recollect and store this type of information and knowledge, you're better prepared than all those people that thought this was just all fantasy and they don't pay attention, if it's true. All right, so one of the sea beasts is going straight towards the ship. They launch their arrows at it. Some of the arrows can pierce the armor. Some of them bounce off, but it's very thick, very tough armor. This is like the legend of the Kraken, right? Which is an interesting etymological study too. So it attacks the ship. Everyone's panicking. Jacob gets tossed aside and he sees this kid freaking out. So he's like, we got it right where we want it. Don't worry. And then the kid's like, oh my God, look out. So this part's super funny, right? He sees this huge tentacle coming down at him. The tentacle symbolism could be from the creatures, as they may have tentacles, as they're alien creatures or whatnot. But also there's a double symbolism of plasma as well. And I'm going to talk about the association that plasma has. It likes to attack ships. It likes to attack tall structures and stuff. All right, so this plasma tentacle is coming right his way. There's nothing that he can do about it. It's going to knock him clear to kingdom come. So he sticks his hand up like, please do not hit me right now. But thwack! Knocks him sky high up into the air. Jacob lands over in the ocean, and the sea beast comes up out of the water and almost swallows him entirely whole. Thankfully, he's able to escape. So he actually jumps out of that monster's mouth. And these are the adventures that the pirates of old, whatever you want to call them, they go by many names, right? Pirates or merchant marines, or, all kinds of different names. These are the types of adventures that they went on. And this is amazing. This is the sea world that they're showing you, when our world was filled with water and the deluge came, right? And many of those Fantazoids found their home in the sea world. They found their home in the ocean world that was a flooded realm that we now live in. The waters have subsided a bit since they first flooded and there's chaos everywhere, but then they've settled down since then. But when they were first introduced, Fantazoids were everywhere to be found. They didn't know what humans were, and there was war between the two of them, right? So they sent out, there were special classes of hunters that were sent out to fight these Fantazoids. Not only were they sent out to fight them, but it became a thing of pride where they would take pieces of the Fantazoid, as you'll see later on, and like use it as decorative armor to add to their own armor, or you know, something to hang on the wall to brag about. So Jacob is almost eaten by a Fantazoid, and he says, "We've taken some right proper monsters on this hunt, and the royals will pay us accordingly." Now, here is an important part of the movie and an important part of our history, right? There were monster hunters, but it wasn't like, you know, just a band of, you know, rebellious people banding together or whatever. Sometimes that would happen, but more often than not, people were given incentive to go destroy the Fantazoid, all of the different kinds of Fantazoids that have invaded our world during this depressurization event, right? So they're actually paid. And at the beginning, the people who became very efficient and good at, some of you are thinking of The Witcher right now, I already know. And you're right. Some people became efficient at killing certain monsters because they studied them. They learned their weaknesses. They learned what they were good at. They were careful, but they were brave. And because they were so efficient at it, and other people either didn't believe in monsters, didn't care, didn't study them, didn't know how to, they were just living in fear, they would pay these people to go get rid of those Fantazoids. So the royals paid the most. The royals had usually the best, they would acquire all of the best Fantazoid hunters, basically. Monster hunters, you can call them whatever you want. They are not of this world, I'll tell you that. They're from inside the world, or they're from outside the world, and they come in. All right, so as you can see, it kind of shows some of the pirates here. Now, you noticed already that the captain's missing an eye. This girl right here, you can see she's got a hook for a hand. One of the other people have a peg leg. Why do they show pirates in such ways, right? Because there was danger. They were out there looking for sea monsters. The monsters would bite pieces of them off, right? So they had to learn and come up with very creative ways to fight these. They had to be very skilled, basically. This is another reason why you see so many of them wearing metal when they're fighting the monsters on land. They have thicker, heavier armor like the knights of old, or the samurai, if you're more in the east, right? They would have huge, heavy, thick armor, not to fight other human beings. That's ridiculous, because it's easy to kill somebody that's wearing heavy, bulky armor, right? But to fight the Fantazoids, to make sure that they didn't get their arms or legs bitten off or their eyes gouged out and whatnot, right? He says every hunter dies a great death. So here's the cool thing, right? If you live during this time, and first of all, you're living, okay? Every single day you're surviving. There's monsters about that could eat you, that could poison you, that could kill you, that could lay babies in you. And it actually talks about that. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But this is really living when you have to fend for yourself, when there are real and legitimate concerns out there and dangers that are out there. It gets your heart racing. I saw a spider earlier in my house, and I was like, I've never been so alive. Like, oh my God, I'm alert, I'm aware. Well, I have purpose and reason. All of a sudden, there's a spider in my house, and that's just a spider. Imagine what the time of the monsters was like, right? Oh, almost forgot I do have some of this yummy popcorn. Thank you all. Somebody mentioned that they'd never seen me eat it before. Like it's not real or something, right? Anyway, he says, because every hunter lives a great life, right? This is what it will be like when you're all set free from the system that you live in today, and the world goes through some sort of collapse or apocalypse or opening. All right, so he goes up to the captain, and the captain basically was like, hey man, I really wanted to catch the red bluster, but you told me to go save that guy's life, and that was the right move to do. And I'm sorry for my attitude, basically. And he says, you steered me right today. You steered me right. Now check this out. He goes over to his books because he wants to share something with Jacob. And it's kind of hard to see the names of these books. But check out what other books the captain has here. Atlas of the Known World. Keep these books in mind because you're going to see them towards the end. There's another one here, the Leviathan. That one's all about the Leviathan. We've got the history of sea beasts, etc. There's all kinds of books over there. Paradise Lost. Now, the Leviathan was shown, right? The Leviathan is one of the sea beasts, one of the Fantazoids, or one of the types, I should say, of Fantazoids that was chronicled It was written down. Some people kept meticulous records of these beasts, right? So here in the Bible, we've got a reference to a sea monster. It's in the book of Job, and it says, "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down?" Basically, can you catch the Leviathan like you would a fish? And the answer is no. "Canst thou put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn?" This means, can you make the Leviathan your slave? You cannot, because humans are not on the top of the food chain when this happens. "Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Lay thine hand upon him, remember the battle, and do no more." So the Bible itself here is saying, do not pet Fantazoids, basically. Do not pet the mythic creatures. And be careful. Be very careful, because the time will come when the humans and humanity is not at the top of the food chain, but the animals reclaim this world, as you'll soon see. All right, so he pulls out his special little book. It turns out that it is his own little journal here, and it has his name at the very beginning. We're going to do some name breakdowns. I love to do that. Augustus Crow III. Now, if you just watch this for the first time, you check it out and you see Augustus Crow III, you might not think anything of that. It's just like, okay, whatever, that's just some guy's name. No, it's not. These are little breadcrumbs of truth. Augustus Crow. Now, Augustus, I'll tell you, means like majestic, right? It means large. It means it's so big that it's awe-inspiring. So usually it means very large, right? Or majestic. Crow, let's check out crow. Crow symbolism comes up a lot in the movies. So it says here, crow is of the bird genus Corvus. Corvus. You see that right there? And it says that it's directly related to raven. It says here it also is related to as the crow flies, which is an expression like as the crow flies, it's this far, or it takes this long, right? Which implies in a straight line. Remember that. A straight line or a beam is associated with the crow symbolism. Excuse me. American English figurative phrase, to eat crow. Interesting. To eat crow means to accept the truth. So here we have an association with the word crow and the truth. Crow in a straight line, crow in the truth. Interesting. But they're related to ravens, so let's check that out. Now, hold on. Let me back up. Before I get into raven, I want to show you this real quick because it's also related to the kraken. The kraken. And it has to do with the original word crow. See how that right there? Kraja and krake, same thing. It's directly related because it's basically the word crack as well, too. So let's look at raven, which we already saw is directly related. In late Old English, refin, or earlier, chrefin. You see that H right there? That became a silent H over time. People stopped pronouncing the guttural sound, but that is supposed to be in the word raven. It's a chra sound, like a H, like a harsh H, right? Chrefen or chreven, right? We also have this, aphin, right? So there's two. Now just follow me real quick. The word raven comes from chrefen. Chrefen breaks down into two words, har, which means mountain, and aphin. So, what does aphin mean? We need to figure that one out. It says here, Old English, let me make it a little bigger. Old English word aphin means evening. It's where we get even, or the evening out of the day, or the dark time, basically. So, by extension, the harefin, or krefin, right, or the crow, etc., means dark mountain. You could translate it as meaning dark mountain. Basically. The word croak is also directly related to crow. As you can see here, the croaken, those birds from the crow race, basically. Ravens, cranes, crows, etc. And it means to make a low, hoarse sound. Imitative or related to Old English Kratian or kraken, just like the kraken, right? The kraken is called such because of the noise that you hear it make while it's in the water. It makes this type of a noise, just like a crow, a raven, a crane. These are animals that are making a croak sound, or almost like a wailing sound, or a sound of lament, or a cry, etc., right? So the crow, like Captain Crow, we're breaking down Captain Crow's name right now. His name also is associated with a low sound. I'm guessing it's going to be a loud sound, but I'll tell you why. The word crack is directly related to raven, to crow, and to craven, and all these other words by extension. Crack comes from Kretian or Krakian, and it means to make a sharp noise, to give forth a loud, abrupt sound. What does all of this have to do? How does it tie in together? All right, so basically, his persona, he represents those from the North Pole. He represents the Tartarians, basically, right? Those who left the North Pole to go out on search of adventure, exploring. They became explorers of the world, etc., possibly Phoenicians, etc. And that book that he has, that has his name on it, Augustus, which means great or big, and then Crow, which comes from Charefin, right? Which means dark mountain. So it basically, his name means 3 dark mountains, okay? Or 3 giant or great dark mountains. Why is it 3? Because he has got that number 3 right there on his book. Well, you saw the book earlier. Hold on, let me show you the book real quick so you can get the symbolism. All right, so check this out. This is what his name means. It means giant or large, black mountains or dark mountains, and 3 of them. And the number 3 here is written in Roman numerals, which means it's 3 posts, 3 pillars, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's what he symbolizes. All right, so let's check out this book. This book that he has, that he's holding. Actually, let's zoom in on it real quick because I want to show you what's on the other page. This is called a bestiary, or bestiary if you'd like. It's hard to see right here, but he's got some pictures of some monsters, and then he's got all this information written down about the monsters, all these analytics. He's got the name, the date areas. Let's learn a little bit about what a bestiary is. This was a book about monsters containing legends, myths, lore, truth, fact, etc. about these beasts. It says here, in Roman, bestiarius meant a fighter against beasts in the public entertainments. So they also, see, here's the thing. At first, there's a lot of Fantazoids. So many that it's overwhelming. So there's not a lot of like monster hunters and stuff. People are just basically surviving. But as things settle down and our world settles down and the human population starts to go back up and stuff, the monsters find places to hide and stuff. And then the humans are able to start learning the monsters' weaknesses, and they start taking them out and decimating their numbers and stuff. So at some point, there was not that many left, but enough so that they weren't really afraid of them. And so what they would do is they would take those monsters or those beasts and they would put them in arenas and kill them for entertainment, basically, or as a form of entertainment. And they called that the bestiarius. Now, there was also bestiarian, which was modeled on the humanitarian word, which means one who advocates for the kind treatment of animals or beasts. Same thing, right? This one's pretty small, so I'm going to make this bigger so we can read it. But it says here, the texts gave no distinction between existing and imaginary animals. So these bestiaries, there are real bestiaries worldwide, okay? They're all over the place. I'm sure the Vatican is full of them. But you can find ancient manuscripts, usually dating back to the Middle Ages, of bestiaries where people cataloged monsters. They put it down in all sincerity, not as a farce, not as a joke, not as a book of fiction or made up lies. These were some of the most coveted books that the royalty sent people out on expeditions and ordered people to surrender their books and stuff because they needed these bestiaries, because these are real monsters. And they threatened their kingdom, basically. Descriptions of creatures such as dragons, unicorns, the basilisk, griffin, and caladrius were common in such works and found intermingled amongst the accounts of bears, boars, deers, lions, and elephants. So all of these strange mythic and legendary animals were, a long time ago, included commonly with other animals like bears and, cats and whatever, like common animals that we have today, because those mythic animals were common at one point in time. So let's take a look at some of these images from real bestiaries worldwide. Now, this one right here, you'll often see dragons wrapped around elephants or fighting elephants. Sometimes there are winged types of Fantazoids that are carrying elephants off. I'll show you. Here's another one. Now, I want to point something out. just because it shows you an animal form and people are out there cataloging stuff that they see does not mean that it is what is being presented. It means that they are presenting to the best of their ability what they think it might be because they don't know what this is. For example, this right here, I have a very strong feeling. It's not based on anything except for my feeling, okay? There could be a creature with some crazy long circle. He's standing on a circle and it's spirally like that. But most likely, remember, during the time of the monsters, our world is magical. Our world is full of energy that is emanating from the heart of the earth itself. There are monsters about. There are giants. There's all kinds. It's a fantastic world. So if they looked up and they saw a plasma formation, oftentimes they would draw it however it looked to them, right? Just like a Rorschach. You look at something that, is not deliberate, but you deliberately make sense of it. And that's what's happening sometimes with these types of creatures. Does that mean that they all are plasma formations and none of them were physical creatures? No, it doesn't. But sometimes it does, especially, in my opinion, when they're fire breathing, right? Now check this out. I'm going to share some of these pictures with you real quick. I want you to keep your eye on this tree right here. Okay. Yeah, the monster's interesting, the person, whatever, but look at the tree that it's attached to. This is supposed to be Earth. I've never seen trees like that. They probably exist, right? But I will also tell you that an element that is not touched on in this movie, but it is touched on in other movies, is when we go through this polarity shift and the sky turns red, it triggers something in all of our plant life to not only grow gigantic, but to grow in a different way. It blooms differently. Many plants bloom differently. Actually, many of the plants that we have in our world today are premature. They're not able to get to full maturity to bloom in the way that they should, or as often as they should. So here's some more examples. This one would be the classic phoenix, right? The bird that survives the fire, right? Which to me, this is a plasma phenomenon. But there might be fireproof birds or stuff. Check this one out. Let's zoom in on this one. Look at the trees. Look at these weird plants. It looks like giant shrubs or giant plants, right? They look like giant plants. And then this dude right here is blue. Now look what's happening in this picture, right? These are kind of hard to make out sometimes. This guy's got the blue Smurf conical hat. This guy literally is blue, which is interesting to me because it may be that some people look like they're blue under a red sky. It depends on the conditions. And then this person right here is holding onto a unicorn or a type of unicorn or an animal with only one horn while they just spear it to death and chop it up. This is creepy looking to me, right? If you're me, I mean, on the other hand, I think it's creepy that everyone's just out eating cheeseburgers and this is what they do to cows, but way much worse and way more traumatizing. At least this person's holding on to whatever this unicorn is and looks like maybe they're comforting it. Now check it out. Here's another one from a bestiary. Same image, same type of image. Somebody is holding and comforting this unicorn type of a creature, right? Sort of keeping it gentle and calm while this guy eagerly smashes it to bits underneath these weird Dr. Seuss looking strange flora and fauna. This is not medieval Saturday morning cartoons. Okay, this is medieval history, right? All right, so let's check out another one. Now here we go. We've got the person comforting the unicorn while the knight, this dude who's wearing chainmail, comes up to it to stab it. We've got the same asparagus-looking trees in the background, right? Isn't that interesting? The guy who's wearing full metal, he's a knight, and he comes up to this unicorn and it totally kills it. The knights are portrayed as fighting these monsters and these great beasts of old, not usually fighting one another. When they're fighting one another, it's because they ran out of monsters to slay, basically, and they didn't want to lose their job. So they had to fight something. They had to provide some sort of entertainment or, some sort of story to tell the people so they can keep their jobs as fighters, basically. Here's another one. Check this out. How common was this, right? That somebody's holding the unicorn and people are like, well, I wonder if unicorns ever existed. I wonder what happened to the unicorns. Humans killed them all. Like, I say that with a little bit of in my voice because I don't like it, right? Here's another creature, same type of unicorn type creature, but it's unmolested and it's just walking up through the forest of asparagus or whatever that is. Right? And here's another one. Now this one's interesting. This guy is walking through his little asparagus forest, but they show that it's gigantic in comparison to what looks like a camel over here and maybe like some sort of ostrich dodo type of a creature down here. It's kind of hard to see. Let me make it bigger. See that little dodo and little camel dude? And this one's huge, but it's got the face of a human. Now this is interesting because quite often these Fantazoid creatures are chimera, right? They're a mix. They're an amalgam, right? They're a squishing together of whatever the perception of the person who drew it was. Whoever has an experience and an encounter with these these are alien creatures. These are otherworldly creatures. He's not going to be, if it looks like a dog, right? But it's got like this interesting like human eyes and, you know, it's this weird face. He will draw a human face on it typically, right? So they combine different elements of things that they're used to. Here's another one with the same weird Dr. Seuss asparagus trees. Does anyone know what these trees even are? Or maybe it's just a small plant that grew into gigantic proportions, right? Like dandelions or something. Now on this one, this is really interesting. This is what I call a devil dog or a hellhound. I believe that those are real, right? I believe there's different classes, different species when it comes to Fantazoids or those otherworldly animals / insects / creatures / whatever. Worms, there's all kinds, right? But this one is what is commonly called the devil dog. There are Fantazoids that are portrayed in our through our subconscious, in our fiction and our stories and stuff, and they act and look kind of like dogs, right? Typically they're very white, right? And they have that Fantazoid white color. However, if this creature is anywhere near like that blue beam, if he's white, he would actually appear to be blue, right? Or possibly purple. Anyway, so here you have another knight, and the knight is actually, looks like he's trying to give him something. He's feeding him whatever he's already eating. So it's like he's trying to lure him away, and it's one of the knights, right? This was the knight's job, was to, oh, look at that. He's got a little baby one. I didn't even see that. How cool. I don't know what's happening in this picture, but this is awesome. And look at that. He's not wearing shoes. That's interesting too. But the knight is holding on to some sort of little baby Fantazoid, like he's collecting them. Wow, that's interesting too. All right, let's move on. Here's another weird one. This one shows up a lot when you look for monsters and bestiaries. This one, the legend says, would basically blow fire out of its butt when it farts or something, or have some sort of fiery excrement, and it would shoot out for like 3 acres, right? So whatever this was huge. And it was popular too because they drew it quite often. Here's the griffin that people have seen from time and time again. Here's one of the people fighting the griffin in the asparagus forest again, for some reason, which brings us to the knights fighting snails. There are many depictions, right? Not on just like, I mean, in the modern world and on ancient literature that shows people fighting gigantic snails. Sometimes the people live inside of the gigantic snail shells as a little makeshift home or place of safety, right? As you can see, they're chasing after this huge snail over here, taking the dogs to it. This is actually going to be in our movie as well. Or we alluded to those when we broke down the Neverending Story, and they showed the racing snail. Same type of concept. Here's another one of those fart Fantazoids. I don't know what to call that. Here's the knights fighting the griffin. As you can see, we took out the great beasts of old. We hunted them down. And when I say we, I just mean humans. I've got no part in it. I don't want any part in it. I will fight that. I will fight Fantazoids if I need to, if they're dangerous, right? If they are posing, just like I will spray bugs. Like if a wasp comes in my house, I might spray it. You know, if a spider comes in, there's a death penalty in my house. But outside of my house, I take care of them or whatever. So I try to be more understanding. The knights back then, no, they were paid warriors. They were paid to go out and to handle this menace that has spread throughout our entire world. Back to the movie. He says, one day you will be captain of the inevitable. So Captain Crow looks over to Jacob, whose name means someone who replaces somebody else, and he says, you will be replacing me. That is how important names are. They're descriptors of what we do, how we act. Here's his bestiary, and this side is blank. This is for Jacob to fill out. And this is what they're supposed to do, right? They're not just pirates. They're not just people that just enjoy living on the water, right? They're out on the water for various reasons. One of those reasons was to capture giant animals. The page is blank. Whenever it shows you a blank page like this in an open book, usually that means it's trying to talk to you symbolically, to us symbolically. And it's saying the future is unwritten. It doesn't have to be this way. Okay? When these things happen to you, your choices will write this book. Your life will fill these pages. So what do you want that book to look like? He said, if you would grant me this ship, I would accept it. So they come into port, right? They're stopping to fight their monster hunting. They come into the port where their little city is, where they're from. And as you can see, the ship is in the middle of like two towers. So there's the two tower symbolism. The two towers are the witnesses on either side of the plasma volcano, or the other two plasma volcanoes, the other two electromagnetic islands that shoot energy up into the sky. And how do we know? Well, let's get some more context. This guy jumps out and addresses everyone. He says, so if this be our last to the three bridges. Oh, wait a minute. This place right here? This is called the Three Bridges. That's interesting. I wonder if the word bridge has any correlation to beam of light that shoots out. Let's look it up. So the word bridge, when we look up the Proto-Indo-European root word, fopow, is baru, which means log or beam. Three bridges, three beams. There you have it. Interesting, right? Okay, so as you can see here, they cut off pieces of the Fantazoids, right? This girl has like some little claw or something right there. This guy's got the big horn from its face. And this is what they did. People paid handsomely for all of these pieces. One, as a trophy, right? Two, as a decoration. It could be decor. Three, as armor, because this stuff was usually pretty tough. And then other people would use it for, I'm sure people ate them. I'm sure they were used as food. I'm sure they were used in potions and stuff like that to get chemicals that are not terrestrial. Basically, these things were very valuable, and the royalty paid a very good price to have their hunters go out and get them, right? Which also, they wanted to expand their land. The royals want to go claim everything. How can you own everything and be in charge of everyone if you don't own all the land? If you don't have your flag stuck in the ground and all these monsters are roaming about. So they try to get rid of the monsters. Now here is a statue of one of their townspeople of old killing this dragon or this beast with a long spear. The spear killing the dragon is Saint George versus the dragon, right? Remember how we talked about St. George when we broke down Monty Python and the search for the Holy Grail, right? That whole legend of St. George, how he was chopped into pieces and cut up and swallowed and dipped in acid, all the worst ways you could try to kill somebody, it was symbolic. Because this image right here, while it can be taken as literal as a human that kills a Fantazoid, which does happen, it's also symbolic if it's a dragon, right? Dragons typically, okay, I'm not saying that there are no physical dragons. It's very possible, okay? I'm sure there's flying Fantazoids and all kinds of things, right? But there's also fire dragons or plasma worms, fire worms, plasma dragons, whatever you want to call them, that is not an actual physical animal, but it is an energetic entity. And what's killing it is not the person holding the staff. It's the staff itself. You could erase that person because what it is it's a lightsaber battle, basically. It's the red beams that come down in the form of the dragon or the Hydra or whatever, and the one blue beam, or the three blue beams, however you want to see it, the staffs that shoot up, straight up into the air and destroy them, because that's the midpoint right whenever our polarity of our world shifts. And then instead of the energy coming down from above, it shoots up from inside of the earth and touches the sky, filling our world with magic, life, vitality, and energy. So this little girl pops into the window when all of the pirates are drinking and celebrating before they go out again. She says, "Hello, my name's Maisie Brumble." And she loves all of the pirates and all their stories. I'm calling them pirates, but they're never referred to as such in the movie. But that's basically what they are. Maisie Brumble is one of the protagonists in this story. What does her name mean? Why is she in this movie? The etymology of Maisie comes from Scottish origin, and it means pearl. Okay, so I'm sure many connections are already being made between pirates and Pearl and the little girl that just poked her head through the door, right? But let's look at the Pearl symbolism, and why do we see Pearl symbolism so much in these pirate stories, right? Well, let's check out where the origin of pearls comes from in myths and legends. There are pearl myths that relate to all time periods. Some go all the way back to the days of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Paradise. According to legends, the couple cried deeply after God cast them out of the Garden of Eden, and their tears created a lake of pearls. Okay, Adam and Eve crying, their tears create pearls. Interesting story, all right? Can we find more? It says here, it was believed that Eve's tears created the white pearls, while Adam's tears created the black pearls. Well, that's very interesting. Remember our last video when we broke down the anode and the cathode of those two plasma volcanoes, or those two witnesses on either side of the Garden of Eden, or the land at the center of our world at the North Pole, right? The anode and the cathode. And we talked about how one of them basically tends to be black. One of them tends to be white. One represents male energy. One represents female energy. Adam and Eve on either side of God or Jesus, or however you want to see it, right? It was believed that Eve's tears created the white pearls. Adam's tears created the black pearls. Furthermore, it is also said that Adam shed less tears than Eve did because men control their emotions better than women. Okay. I think it has to do with the electrical charges between positive and negative myself. Supposedly, this explains why black pearls are so rare. Interesting. Here are some other references to religion and pearl meanings. According to the Quran, the pearl can be found in paradise. Wow, well, we just read that about the Garden of Eden, right? There's a connection between the Garden of Eden, or paradise, and pearls being made. This is where the brides wearing pearls on their wedding days tradition is said to have started, which continues to this day. Because they symbolize religious purity, pearls became sacred objects to Christians by the Middle Ages. And during early times, Christians believed that the pearls covered the Holy Grail, that there was pearls on the Holy Grail, and it purified the water. Well, that's also super interesting because the Adam and Eve symbolism, or the beam to the left and the right, the two witnesses to that central beam, right? That central beam shoots up. And when that beam shoots up and it starts to undulate and to move and to swirl about, it takes a torus shape, or a toroidal field. And that toroidal field looks like the chalice, or the grail, you could say. And then there are these pearls that are attached to it. This is very interesting. And those pearls helped to purify the water, making it holy water, right? Water that is clean, water that is pure, not water that is dirty and full of muck and salt and all this stuff, which means that there is a place in this world that generates pure, clean ocean water that's drinkable. All right, let's see what this one right here is. Sorry about it being so small. It says, in ancient Japanese legend, during ancient times, the Japanese believed that the tears of mythical creatures created pearls. Well, isn't that something else too? What's going on with pearls being, I thought I was going to read a bunch of oyster stuff, right? Or pearls coming from clams or oysters or something that sounds more realistic. Every single one of these is saying that they have some origin in tears, or tears of legendary people or gods or whatnot, right? Or legendary creatures. Some of these creatures include, but are not limited to, nymphs, mermaids, and angels, which all can be seen as plasmic entities, right? In ancient Persia, it says, according to one Persian pearl myth, the gems were created after a storm. Well, interesting, because we have the storm symbolism of the plasma storm that rushes through our world. What else do we have here for these ones? Oh, let's see. Persia, it says gems were created after a storm, and that's when a rainbow came down from the sky and met with the earth. Lightning and thunder were said to be the reasons for the pearls' imperfections. Interesting. So the pearls basically created by some sort of storm or tempest. Ancient Egyptian legends say that during ancient times, Egyptians were buried with their pearls after they died because they valued them so much. The myth from this era that's most famous involves Cleopatra, the famous ruler. I'm sorry, this is hard to read when I scroll it like this. I gotta do a better job. Supposedly, this was done to show Roman blah, blah, blah. I don't really want to read this one. Hold on. Ancient Chinese. Oh, black pearls. Again, here's another black pearl reference, right? Black pearls were very symbolic during early Chinese civilization. They were symbolic of wisdom. People believed that the gems were formed inside of the head of a dragon. Once they were fully grown, the dragon carried them between its teeth. According to a myth, a person could only gather the pearls by slaying the dragon to death. Wow. So we've got a lot of electromagnetic symbolism in the guise of Adam and Eve, of the Garden of Eden, of these dragons, of lightning, of storms happening, and the creation of these highly sought after pearls. We might not be talking about little tiny rocks that are made inside of an oyster. This might be symbolic for something else. Let's check out the word pearl, see what it means real quick. It says here, other theories connect it with the root of the word pear, which also somehow based on the shape, or the Latin piellula, which means a globule. See that right there? So the word pear, and by extension, the word pearl, means a glob, basically, right? Which is where we get the word globe from. The Latin word for pearl was margarita. So if your name is Margaret, this is what your name harkens back to, basically, or Margarita, Marguerite, all of those words, all those names. But it's interesting because a pearl is direct. We have a relationship with fruit. Pearls that are highly sought after by people, these little globules that come off of the tree of life, or, between Adam and Eve, or from a storm, or from electromagnetic activity and energy, these little globules come off of them, right? Some white, some black, and they're highly sought after. And there's an association with fruit, just like the apple, just like the golden apples of the Hesperides and stuff like that. All right, here's also the black pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm sure a billion people were thinking of that one, right? Of course. So we go back. We go back. And the girl is talking to the guy. And the reason I took a picture of this is because of the 3 Vavs that are above their heads. As you can see, 1 V, 2 Vs, 3 Vs. That's your 555 if you're a movie fan, or your 666 if you understand what the letter V represents. All right, so she says, me parents were lancers. They served on the monarch. Lancers, you're going to see that lance symbolism, the lance, the spear, the arrow. In Hinduism, it's typically an arrow, right? Oftentimes is the blue beam symbolism of those many beams that come up out of our world. It's not just at the North Pole. That's the biggest one, I believe, right? And then there's 2. The second and third biggest one are to the left and to the right of that main one in the middle. But there are many inner earth entrances, right? Smaller ones where they will have their own little beams of light shooting out of them as well. And these are the places where the lances are seen as staving off the invading electrical phenomenon, which is red plasma that's drifting in from the skies above. And as you can see, they portray it or cartoonify it here in many ways. 1, this represents real monster fighting. 2, it represents the red tentacles of the plasma from the cosmos coming down into our world, and the blue beams of light of the earth with a natural protective mechanism, sort of. It just looks like it's fighting it, but it's not. It's all natural. It's all a shift. So they go into the main city. Now look at how this main city looks, right? Let me shrink this a bit so you can see all of it. This is what is called today a star fort, and there are many of them. This shows you, and this gives you a clue as to what era, what epoch, where we are on that timeline. From the resetting of the world to the resetting of the world, right? We fall somewhere in between 2 resets. Where are we? We're in the time when they built cities and forts and castles and barracks and all kinds of stuff that looked like star shapes, right? Let's take a look at some of them just for an example. As you can see, there's many. You can Google star forts. They go by different names, but usually they're surrounded by water as well. You can see there's like lots of little rivers of water. They're all over the world. Here's a map where people are keeping track of how many star forts are in the world, all over the place. But look where they're mainly actually. Europe, boom, millions of them. And then we've got like this nice little trail that goes down from the far north down into India, and then it spreads all the way over to Japan. That's very interesting because this is exactly what the Vedas say as far as where they're the Hindus where what am I trying to say? The Hindu people, according to the Vedas, attribute the growth of their economy, their history, their vegetation, their ability to grow food and crops and stuff to other people who came down from the north, right up there. And they actually came down this line right here. Some branched out and went this way. Some branched down here and went down into India and around the waters down there. And of course, some came over this way, hopped the islands over towards the Americas. Anyways, all right, so we zoom in on this place where the royals live. Now check out their symbol, right? We've got two witnesses on either side. That's one beam. That's another beam. It's some sort of twisty fish, which means it's typically symbolic of plasma, right? And then we've got the North Pole symbol right there in the middle, which points to every direction, right? Because when you're at the North Pole, you're at the center, and you know, wherever you go, you can't go further north. You're in the middle. All right, so they enter in. As you can see, hanging from the walls or hanging from the roof is like the skeletons of these Fantazoids. This is what we call, I believe, dinosaurs. Like these are the dinosaurs. And this is why there was a time when dinosaurs, I don't really believe in dinosaurs as they're portrayed. I think that all the Jurassic Park dinosaurs were just Fantazoids, but their bones were put together in all kinds of crazy ways. They're cartoonified. Oftentimes they're just straight up wrong images, but that doesn't mean that there's no substance to the idea behind it, which is otherworldly monsters that rule this world and coexisted with humans. We know this subconsciously, at least, right? We see it's in all of our folklore and stuff. But if you look at academics, they'll say, no. Humans existed here. Dinosaurs existed way back here. They never touched one another. They never crossed. They never met. I think they did, actually. Now, if you look at the floor, their entire floor is like this huge map as well. And look at these columns inside. If you look at older architecture, that's another clue of what epic you're in, or what epic they're sharing with you of your own history, of your own world, right? These columns are there. They're twofold, right? One, they help to hold up large hollow structures like that, but two, they also help to redirect electromagnetic energy or electricity, basically. Everything is green, so that tells you where we are. We're somewhere in the area of the north, or the North Pole, where you can see the aurora borealis. It is the heart of the earth, and that is symbolic by the color green. So they bring them some monsters, some dead monster pieces, and they're like, oh, I saw that you've got a full-grown brickleback. Brickle just means like tough, basically. So if you hit it hard enough, it'll crack. And it's the same word as brittle, right? Tough, but crackable, basically. It's the Kraken. You will pay, they said, this guy, the representative, comes out. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. I don't know why I am. This guy comes out and says, they will pay you to kill monsters. This is the queens of our world, the kings of old. This is what they did. They hired mercenaries. They hired warriors. They hired monster killers, people who had a name for doing this. They made them an offer they couldn't refuse. And they said, okay, yeah, I'm going to go work for the king and queen. You know what I mean? There was probably even tryouts, I would assume, if the world of old was anything like this one. And they probably had all kinds of sporting events and tryouts to become the monster hunters or whatever. So you can make millions of dollars and be set for the rest of your life because they paid very well. Excuse me. So the king and queen come out. They're both a couple of douchebags. And they say it's been hundreds of years since the dark times. Now, they refer to the dark times. Essentially, you're looking at the Middle Ages, okay? Essentially, right? It doesn't have to be the Middle Ages. But imagine somebody living during the Middle Ages referring to the dark times, right? Like, we basically call the Middle Ages the dark times. But imagine if you have people then that refer to the dark times. They're referring to the time when it was dark. They're referring to the time when the world went dark, when the lights went out, when there was an electromagnetic polarity shift, and all of the lights in the sky turned off for a while, and people lived in the fog. All right, so she says, but as long as the bluster lives, right, as long as you've got that red sky, people will still look to the seas with fear. They don't do that these days, right? That's how you know what epic we're looking at on the movie right now. People don't respect the ocean these days. There are monsters in the frickin' ocean. I'm telling you right now. I'm not saying you should be scared to go surfing or something. I mean, there's many dangers, okay? I've seen sharks when I was out surfing and stuff. But it's not just sharks. There are gigantic, huge, Titanic-sized creatures monstrous looking creatures. You don't want to know what's in there. If you're the type of person to go swimming in the ocean, you don't even want, that's like telling somebody what hot dogs are made out of when they're eating one. You know what I mean? You're not going to want to go in the water. But if you want to, that's fine. Be brave. I don't care. That's fine with me. I mean, I do care. But my point is, we don't respect the ocean anymore because we sent out all these people to go find the monsters, to kill them all, to eradicate them all. And then we have the hypocrisy to go around talking about like trying to save all of the animals that are, you know, almost, they're on the endangered species list or they're going extinct and we really don't want them to go extinct. What a load of baloney, right? At least coming from the people who are in charge of this world. Trust me, they don't give a rat's butt about any animals going extinct. So they say the crown will no longer support the hunters. Now there comes a time when they're starting to build their empire, right? They're starting to gather up things. They're starting to, get more and more slaves. They're developing their system. Now they basically created piracy. They basically are paying these people to go live on boats, to go out into the seas, into known areas of the known world, and even areas of the unknown world, to go find these monstrous creatures and to kill them so they can pay them. So they get comfy living that life, being able to dress however they want and eat whatever they want. And all they have to do is go out and kill monsters and bring them back. Sweet. That sounds like a good deal to some people. But whenever the crown gets enough slaves and there's more than enough people volunteering to be monster hunters, etc., they get rid of the monster hunters. They create pirates, people who are now used to living out on the oceans in gigantic boats, having a captain and having a restaurant on board and all the comforts and luxuries, but then they have no purpose for being out there. Right? Because they replace them with their armies or their navies or their royal guards or whatever they are, right? Because people are just so happy to do whatever the king and queen say. They're like, man, we don't have to pay all these people. We could just make them. We just make our armies and our guards and stuff do this work for us. You know what I mean? So that pisses off the pirates. They're not too happy about that. They say the Royal Navy will push deep into the unknown world and eradicate every sea beast in our past. So now you have the pirates, which used to be, I like to think, good-natured people, regular Joes and Janes like you and I, who are just trying to make a living out there, and they're out being the monster hunters. They're replaced by this guy and what he represents, which is, look at this symbol too. That's actually a symbol. That's really interesting because that's at the end of the movie. But they're replaced by the government. They're replaced by all of them, and they go out on missions to find these monsters. Now let's check out some real maps of the world and some map examples. Let's see, where are we? This one says Scandia. I'm not sure where we are right now. Oh, okay. So up here, you see this island right here? It says Islandia. Islandia is actually Iceland. Okay. It's probably where we get the word island from, and we don't pronounce the S because then it sounds like Iceland. But this is the original island, which is Iceland, basically, right? And you can see all the way around Iceland, there are these beasts. Let's check it out. There's beasts that are drawn, and there's frigates, and there's boats. There's these flying fish. There's these sea creatures and sea monsters all over the place. There's a giant crab or lobster or something over there. And then we get over towards the other part of the UK there. This is also where that current is that we talked about in the last breakdown. The North Atlantic Current, right? Where the warm water goes up towards the North Pole. And this is one of the reasons why, people in the UK have warmer temperatures than they actually should. But as you can see on older maps, they drew these images and they put them all over the place. It's not because they were stupid. That's basically how our ancestors are portrayed in all of academics everywhere, is they're dumb. They just didn't know any better. They believed in fairy tales. They believed in monsters, and they knew that they would be under the penalty of death if there was any problems. Okay, so let's continue on. Hopefully we're still good. I feel like I'm glitching out on the video, but hopefully we're not. So let's take a look at some more examples of these great beasts of old and how they were drawn. Look, this is not just, this is where they have crabs. This is where they have giant lobsters in this particular region. And you could see they put a human right there to show you that's not just a really big symbol of a crab because there's lots of little crabs in the area. There was a giant crab seen there. So they put it there on the map to warn people and to let people know, hey, this monster is still out there somewhere. Now look at this one right here. This is another sea creature on a real ancient map. Zoom in on it. And what do we see is going on there? There's a ship trying to catch the sea monster, and there are actually people on the back of it. This literally happens in the movie. This is real history. These are real maps. This is not Marvel. This is not fiction. This is real. Look at this one. Here's another one, because I wanted to show some examples where they're not just all monsters and they're trying to kill them. They were friends with some of them. They befriended some. This sea beast, this creature in this old ancient, look, that's Spain right there, right? This is transporting humans. And they're on the back of this thing worshiping. As you can see, there's like the one candle or the two witnesses here on either side of the main beam right there. And they're all standing on the back like it's nothing, right? They're just taking a ride on a fantastic creature. Blows my mind. Here is another one of Iceland, I believe. This one's got all the sea creatures all the way around. As you can see, various types of sea creatures were added to these maps. There's a sweet volcano right there in the middle. I like that one. Here's another one. This one is actually an example of where they drew giants, like humanoids, as you can see, right? This is South America, and it says right here, this is the region of the giants. That's why they drew like a little dude and really big dudes, because there was giants spotted there. So they put them on the map. Here's another version of the same area where it says here, Region de Giganti, the region of the giants, the area where giants were seen. Here's another one of the same map. A huge Fantazoid creature, bird, dragon, whatever, is picking up an elephant and transporting it, taking it somewhere else. Here you can see they actually drew this. This is not a scene from the movie that we're watching, but this is the armada that's dispatched on the map, and you can see them out there swimming around, and there's all these sea creatures, all these various sea monsters all around them. This is all over the place. So back to the movie. He says, I assure you, I am not afraid of those beasts. Well, let me tell you something, world, right? Most people in this world are also not afraid of beasts because they don't believe in them. They don't think they're real. They think that they're fictional. They think that they're just made up lies to amuse and entertain people. And that's why they don't fear them. And that's why the response from Captain Crow is, then you're a fool. You don't fear any of these gigantic, monstrous, alien kind of creatures that can easily swallow you whole, destroy your towns and everything. Then you're a fool, right? You should have fear. Fear is healthy to a certain extent, to a certain degree. Fear inspires us to learn, right? And to change, because if we don't, we die. So it's a great motivator. Of course, the point is to not fear. So we need to fear in order to not fear, basically, so we can get over our fears. Here's the example. This is not from an ancient map. This is actually from the movie. It looks like it, though. And you can see they drew the red bluster there. There's some people crawling into it. Excuse me. Now, the little girl, affectionately known as the Black Pearl, because that's exactly what her name means, she stows away onto the ship. She sneaks on board the pirate ship, and she meets the captain, and she goes, you don't need any introduction, right? Usually that is whenever you meet somebody who is of renown, somebody who is a hero, somebody who is a legend, or someone who symbolizes a legend, right? She says, you've been swallowed whole, shot through the heart, and cut to pieces, but the worms won't eat you, and hell won't take you, so here you are. Symbolically, he represents a beam of light, a cosmic beam of light that is seen in the sky, making different formations, and it's sort of a cosmic stick figure, and stuff is happening to this cosmic stick figure as parts of it disappear, or parts of it are sort of breaking, and its arms are seen as being breaking or moving about, etc., right? So these stories develop of this cosmic person being tortured at the center of the world in some stories, right? The worms won't eat you. Those are the fiery sky worms that come down from above, etc. Hell won't take you. Hell is the blue beam being sucked back into the earth as our world recharges, right? But hell won't take the blue beam because it spits it back out every other cycle and it reintroduces it back into our world. Now, here's their map in the movie, right? Looks very similar to the real maps of old. Now, in the movie, their ship is about to come into view right here, and it's traveling this direction, so it's leaving this direction. Now, right here would represent the North Pole. Right here would represent the center mysterious island. This island, which is called Rum Pepper Island, represents either the anode or the cathode of the North Pole. All right, so the ship comes back into the view. They're going out into the Dregmor Sea. Now, if this represents the North Pole up here, there is a circle. There is a current. There's a current of air above the North Pole called the polar vortex, right? There's electricity that is swirling around in a circle, which is why we have our jet stream that only flows in one direction. And the waters reciprocate that, right? Waters are being made, fresh water is being created at the North Pole, and it's creating a constant storm and a current. So the closer you get to the North Pole, the more you will start to pick up on a current where the seawater is rushing about as if it was a river, basically. So what happens after that is that all of that current is actually taking sediment and pushing it off to the sides. And sediment after sediment is building up in those areas. And that's where they're going to right now, the area known as the Dregmor, or the sediment swampy areas, right? So they shoot off their red fireworks or whatever to try to call the Fantazoids once more. And he says, we passed Rum Pepper Island in the night. And then I think one of them is Rum Pepper Island and the other one is like the White Castle Island. I think there's still black and white symbolism there too. So the red bluster sees the red. He's attracted to it. He goes towards it. They capture him. They actually attach like a huge fishing hook and rope and stuff, just like you saw in those medieval pictures, right? And they're letting it pull the ship to try to tire it out. So the creature is very smart. The creature starts swirling around so that it can sort of suck the ship down into the sea and win the battle, basically, right? Now, in doing so, one of our heroes here, Jacob, falls into the water with Maisley. Is that what her name? Maisley? Anyways, they're both in the water. The sea beast sees them and basically they jump up into a boat. The captain is like, bring that girl to me. He's really pissed off because the girl kept him from killing the sea beast. The girl represents the heart. She's got a heart of gold in this and she doesn't like to see any animals destroyed. And the captain's pissed because he's been searching for this his entire life. It has become his purpose. Now the red bluster goes up and swallows both Jacob and the girl whole in their boat. And they wake up inside of the mouth of this giant monster. Another name for monster is whale. Reminds me of Pinocchio. There is a whale of gigantic proportions and its name is Monstro, right? These were the great beasts of old, not just the whales that we are familiar with, like the blue whale or the humpback or whatever. There are other Fantazoids out there that are much bigger, that can swallow ships whole, just like you see in Pinocchio. Here's another example from the Bible. This would be Jonah. Jonah, there's a story called Jonah and the Big Fish, Jonah and the Whale. I don't believe that's a good translation, is to call it whale. It actually literally says this in the interlinear of the Bible. It says that God prepared a fish, a big fish, to swallow Jonah. So that word fish is dog, right? It's pronounced dog, just like a little pet dog that you have. That's actually the name for a fish. Isn't that weird? Our world's upside down and backwards, that dogs are actually fish. Excuse me. Actually, the word dog is actually fish. And that's why you have the dogon or the dogon, right? Those of the fish people, those of the fish gods. And there were fish gods, believe it or not. Check this out. People used to dress up as fish and worship the fish gods of old. Here you can see this is from an Assyrian cylinder with Dogon, the fish god, Dagon, right? Sometimes it's Dagon, sometimes it's Dogon, Dagon, it's pronounced in different ways. But you also have the symbolism of the tree of life right there in the middle, or the blue beam that shoots up, and then it's got all these little pearls around it, right? It's plasma creating little vortices of energy. And then, of course, above the tree of life, you have the all-seeing eye, or the depressurization point in the sky. Here's another example of Dagon or Dogon, etc., the fish god, right? Some different ways that he's portrayed. Also called Ionas. Ionas. Now let's go back. Ionas, if this guy right here represents Dagon or Ionas, as we see in this picture right here, the fish god, Ionas is another way of saying Johann or John, right? Which one of these pillars is basically named John. The pillars from Freemasonry is what I'm referring to. And then this carries on into our religion. Our stories become our religions. Okay, our myths and our legends are told over and over again, and because there's so much substance to them, right? Even though they're told in cartoonified ways and in story form, there's so much substance to our myths and our stories and our legends that they develop over time into our belief systems about our history, and we call that religion. The Pope here is seen as wearing a mitre or a fish hat. As you can see, they wore a huge fish costume. He's got like this sort of pointy hat at the top, and then he wears this sort of fish cape on the back. The Pope emulates it perfectly and wears the fish hat, basically, just like they used to a long time ago, back when they were all stupid. All right, so they got swallowed up. However, they're still alive. This creature has not swallowed them to try to destroy them in its stomach, so they actually are in its nostril right now. I'll zoom out. So you can see they're in the nostril. The creature, this beast, is saving them. It's taking them away from the danger because it saw that the little girl cared about it, and the little girl is about to get murdered by the captain of the pirate ship. So this creature, the red bluster, takes them off beyond the Dregmor Island to some sort of mysterious land that's full of otherworldly monsters. So he was kind of attached to it there. They come face to face, and this whale, this monster, drops him off on the island. Exactly how it says in the Bible when discussing the story of Jonah and the big fish. As Jonah was stuck inside of this fish, but the fish was actually keeping him in his mouth to drop him off somewhere else. The fish was instructed to go somewhere and to drop him off. Not like it was eating him and it forgot or something. She says, what if them things ain't as bad as they say? Right? That's a good question, and it's coming from a child. In order for us to survive, in order for us to make it, we need to revert our mindset back to a childlike mindset. And here we have the little girl who's inside of this giant conch shell, basically. And she says the sea is their home. And this is all true. The sea is their home. They live there, right? We are often the invaders. We go out and invade stuff, and then we blame the people who we just invaded for us invading, when we could have just left people or left animals or left things alone, right? She says, we went after her, didn't we? Right? What if we just left them alone? So this guy who represents the one whose reputation is on the line because he's a monster hunter, and she's asking him to question everything that he represents in the world that they're in. He says, do I need to remind you one more time that those things took your parents? So now he's latching on to these ideas and these reasons why he does what he does. The reason he does what he does is because somebody told him to. That's all, right? Or it was a tradition and they forgot the origin of it. They forgot the meaning as to why they were doing this. But he works for the king and the queen. He's in the system. He says, should they have just left the monsters alone? And see, now he's trying to get to her heart and play with her feelings. She goes, I don't know. She's being honest, right? Sometimes you need to defend yourself. Sometimes you need to take action, right? That's serious action. But just because you need to once doesn't mean you need to all the time. She says, maybe you can be a hero and still be wrong. Words well spoken. Maybe you can still be a hero and be wrong at the same time. Just because somebody's a hero in the eyes of our culture or our society or history doesn't mean that they made the right decision. There's always another side to those stories. All right, so he looks at the tattoo that he has on his arm. Now, tattoos are a symbol of the tattooed ones, or those of the Tet, or if you're a Star Wars fan, Tatooine or Tatooon, those who are tattooed, right? Typically, these people had tattoos. They had markings of who they were and where they were from when they left the North Pole and started traveling about the rest of the world. They are the Tartarians. The Tet. Those who are from the Tet of the world. So we've got her inside of this little shell. That's the conch shell that she was in, being the little pearl inside of the giant shell. And she's living inside of it as a little place of safety. As you saw, they drew pictures of snail shells and stuff with humans inside of them, right, when the snails were gone. Now they find this little blue creature, right? He's supposed to be like a little baby Fantazoid. To me, he represents a little blue ball of light, okay? To me, this is just me, okay? He represents, because he has light on him, okay? And none of the other monsters really have light on them. I know creatures do have bioluminescence and whatnot, but to me, he represents a little blue ball of like lightning, basically. It's ball lightning, essentially. And it's blue because it probably comes off of the main tree of life. All right, so she comes out of her shell, etc. She goes over to the blue light to pick it up, or to the little blue creature. Super cute. I love this guy. I think we all probably want one. And she wants to keep it as a pet. Now check this out. Listen to what happens next, right? This is crazy. All right, so check this out. She says, it ain't childish to want a pet. He goes, not pets that will lay eggs in your mouth and then hatch and burst out through your chest cavity. She goes, oh my God, that was so specific. And then he goes on to say, well, hey, I've seen it, basically. So this is what I've been talking to you about, okay? Be careful of which of those Fantazoids that you take in until you have your bestiary properly filled out so that you have spent time examining them, watching them. Don't interact. Don't be in their life and stuff, right? Be watchers, right? Watch, record, figure out what these Fantazoids do, right? You might meet the nicest little creature in the world, think it's the cutest thing ever, but it lays, like he said, lays babies in your face. And then next thing you know, you've got like the T virus, and there's like, you become the thing, and you're walking around with creatures growing out of you, and you can't even die because it's during the time of no death, where all the energy is amplified and life force is amplified. So now you're just in constant agony and torment, blended and melded with other creatures of other worlds that are living off of your body. So don't be quick to just go pet and make friends and hang out with these otherworldly creatures that also might carry with them otherworldly diseases, right? Be careful around them. All right, so Jacob gets into a fight with a huge, gigantic Fantazoid crab, Mr. Crab, if you will. This one's pretty sweet looking. It's a very artistic rendition of a giant crab. Now, it's a Fantazoid. It's an otherworldly creature. Now, here's the thing. There are those animals and insects and creatures and stuff that are huge outside of our world, just outside of our world, that will one day float down into our world and land safely on the surface, and they will make this their new home, right? They'll try to find food and shelter and all that fun stuff. But at the same time, also there's those that come up from within the earth. At the same time, for the next age, everything will grow to gigantic proportions. So this could be some sort of alien creature that's just gigantic already, but it could also represent those creatures that are here on Earth growing and growing and growing to large sizes because our world has just suddenly depressurized. And new elements are introduced, like fresh oxygen and whatnot. Here's some other examples of giant crabs throughout pop culture. It seems that they come up a lot. And when similar things start coming up a lot, this one's from Love, Death, and Robots. I totally watched the new season, and wow, it was really good. I really like this one in particular, actually. This one's got a huge giant crab inside of it. There's a movie called Queen Crab with a huge one. This one is Land of the Lost, I believe, where they're just chilling and there's this huge giant crab that comes up to them. This one, maybe Fantastic Planet, I can't remember, but there's a giant crab scene where they have to fight this huge giant crab. Now, if you think this is not possible, let's look at some real life crabs. Let's check out some images from our world today, from the modern world. Can animals grow to gigantic sizes? Look at this. Look at some of these gigantic crabs that I have found just by a quick internet search. What would you do if you went to take out the trash and saw that attached to the side of your trash can? Look at that thing. And that's under these conditions. Imagine when the world is amplified to support conditions of gigantic growth. What do things like that become? They become Fantazoids. They become otherworldly great beasts of old. This guy's got a huge one. There's all kinds of them. All right. So anyways, the red bluster gets into a fight with the crab. It's totally protecting the people. And then the little girl is trying to talk to it because they're stranded on the island now and they need to get off. And she says, hey, I wonder if you might be kind enough to like take us. And she shows him like, you know, he represents that one and they're the boat that's on top and stuff. And he looks at her and Jacob's like, he doesn't understand you. But then he picks up their boat and he gives them a ride. Right? He just goes underneath and lifts the boat up and he takes off. They ride a Fantazoid like Atreyu rides Falkor. Right? And like I said, this is not fiction. This is on ancient maps, drawings, serious drawings that were commissioned by kings and queens under the penalty of death, that they had to be the most accurate maps that you could come up with that would not lead people astray and make them think that there are fantasy creatures out there when there are not. Right? So this really happened. And just to remind you, I pulled up this picture once again. There's a few of them like this, but this is one of my favorite ones where you can, this is almost exactly like the movie, except for this is probably 1,000 years old. I don't know. Somewhere it's hundreds of years old at the least. Here's some more pictures of modern day giant sea creatures that have been found. This is a ray. The other one was a fish. This one's a sunfish. Those, look how huge those grow to. I don't know what that is. Some kind of big mouth shark. This is a strange one that washed up ashore. They say that it is like a rotten whale or something. I'm not sure. I don't know. This is an interesting one. This is a video you can check out online. Here's another one. Huge, gigantic sea creature, sea monster, basically. And this is how big they get. At least the ones that we found in these conditions. I'm telling you, when the conditions change in our world, everything expands. Everything gets huge and gigantic and less dense. All right, so he's giving him a ride on the red bluster train or whatever. Now, Jacob goes up to him and he's like, I need you to go right. You need to turn right. And he's getting really frustrated with the Fantazoid because it's not turning the way he wants it to, right? So the little girl drops down in front of his other eye and she starts making like a flying motion, like she's headed off in one direction or another. The Fantazoid understands and she's able to communicate with it, right? I believe that the ability to speak with creatures of all types is going to be greatly amplified when our world's energy is greatly amplified, right? Those who have more of a creative mind will probably find it easier to communicate with animals than those who have more of an analytical mind of the age that we're in now. Okay, so we go up to the red bluster, which represents the red sky. And as you can see, it's got all these poles stuck into it, right? All these different poles that have been shot into it to try to capture it or whatnot. This is just symbolic of all the different beams of light that shoot up from our world. So she has compassion. She pulls out those poles, which is great. That's why I took a picture of it. I think that's great that we should have compassion towards all creatures, right? I mean, even creatures that are out to like eat us as food and stuff. I mean, yeah, I'm going to protect myself, but I also have compassion that they're just eating or they're just protecting themselves or they're just doing whatever. But on the other hand, so am I. It's called the law of the land. So the captain really wants to capture the red bluster. So he goes to this witch. All of his crew are not happy about this decision. They're like, nah, you should not go to that witch. You don't need her kind of help. And she says, you've heard the rumors about me, right? Those who seek my help, their life is forever changed. He says, I don't believe in them superstitions. Imagine that. A guy who chases giant sea beasts and Fantazoids, Fantazoids, says that he doesn't believe in those kinds of superstitions. Her response is, oh, you will. I don't suppose you do. See how her eyes get all red right there? Did you see that from here to here? Her eyes get red. And then she says, you will. So check this out. This is the mindset of most people in this world. I don't believe in superstition. People just they slap on that word to things so easily. Ah, that's superstition. Oh, that's just a myth. Especially combined with the word just. Like, that's just a myth. That's just a superstition. That's just a children's story. That's just a movie. Pfft, truth in movies. It's just a movie. It's just there to like distract you. That's it. Okay, well be distracted then. I'm going to learn. I'm going to listen to the song of the world that's being sang in every single form everywhere, and I'm going to pull some truth out of it. The same thing that we do with movies, man, you could do with so many different things. You could do with runes. You could do with dice. You could do with popcorn. You could drop it into the bowl, and the world can, everything is fractal. It's all connected, right? But we each have our own specialities, I suppose you could say. Some people are popcorn special, right? They might be really in tune. They could prophesy by casting popcorn out in front of them. Me, I break down movies. It's all speaking to us, all of it. We just all have our own little areas of expertise in listening. All right, so her eyes glow red, which means that she is a witch, which means that doesn't mean she's bad, okay? It just means that she's powerful. She's filled with a strong spirit. And in the days to come, I believe that whenever the energy of our world is re-amplified, that you will see people's eyes, many people's eyes, light up once more. She says, you will believe. And many of you will believe too. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to take actually, having these events happen before people will concede to the fact and say, yes, okay, the sky turns red. Yes, okay, there's fog everywhere. Yes, okay, there's nitrous oxide clouds that are making my neighbors laugh. Yes, okay, there's this Fantazoid trying to get into my house. You know what I mean? But some people, even then, they won't believe it. They won't. They will deny it. They'll think that they're crazy. They'll think that they're dreaming. They might try to go to extremes to try to wake themselves up, and they can't or whatever. Some people are going to be living in a nightmare because they can't accept it. All right, so she gives him this ultimate weapon, and it's called the Hand of God. Well, that's interesting. The Hand of God represents plasma. That is the shape, right, of plasma, right? It's got a trunk, and then it branches out. That's why so many shapes like us, who are made in its image, right? That's why we branch out. That's why trees branch out and stuff. It all follows suit. It is the Hand of God, which represents plasma. And it's also a giant spear, right? So it's plasma in the form of a giant spear that's going to shoot and kill the red bluster, basically. He says, what will it cost me? I take everything, Captain. Everything. Interesting. All right, so they're back on the red bluster. They fixed up his back. They took out all those spears and stuff. And then he's reading her childish book about pirates, right? The one that she was reading, a little bedtime story that's totally not true. And the book is about him, basically, or parts of it are. And he's like, it says here that during the dark times, the beast destroyed a town on the coast of Krazul. But I've been up and down that coast, and I ain't never seen no town. And we don't say yar half this much, right? Hold on, I'm sorry. Yar, yar, arr, matey, right? That's what we think of. That's what we do when we talk about pirates. This is a legend. This is amazing. They show you a pirate who's reading a book about pirates, about himself, when he should know what he sounds like, what he looks like, what he does, what he talks like. And he's saying this book's got it all wrong. This book's crazy. It's got some truths in there, but man, they twisted a lot of this. We don't say yar all the time, right? But she says, and she's speaking to us, especially those truth seekers that are like, that's not true. That's not true. But the book says otherwise. The book says otherwise, and it's going to outlast both of us. So people will believe that beasts destroy towns that don't exist, and hunters like to say yar. And he says, but if that ain't true, then how are you supposed to know what is true, right? He acknowledges that these books that are history about him, he's vouching for the fact that they're not accurate, that there's some truths in there, but they've been twisted up and the stories are all mixed up and stuff. He's like, if that's not true, how are you supposed to know what is true when you're trying to get information from a book or from the official sources, we'll say, right? We'll come back to that in just a bit. Or that monsters ever plucked ladies out of their veggie patches during the dark times, etc. Now we go back underwater to Jacob and Measley. They're being transported underwater. I just like these jellyfishes, actually. That's why I took a picture of that. They're beautiful. This is a picture of the Hand of God. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a dragon on the side of it, which is more plasma symbolism, if you see there. It's kind of hard to see, but I've got a better picture we'll come back to. The red moon comes out. Now, this is interesting too, right? The red moon, the blood moon, it's always an omen. It's always a sign, right? There's different ones. And there's even esoteric blood moons that people don't know about that really they happen hardly ever, right? You see the red moon quite often. Well, if there's debris in the sky, like there's a fire or something, the moon might turn red. But that's not the real blood moon, right? The real blood moon is whenever you see an eclipse, and I'm going to have to talk about this when I make a video about the moon, but red is seen because something is happening to allow you to see just a glimpse of what's beyond our sky. That's the color that's beyond our sky. It's red. So whatever is going on with the eclipses is revealing to you just what is on the other side of all that darkness. And that's also whenever, whenever the sky turns red and stuff, Fantazoids drop down, etc. Now, there's all these creatures that are shrieking, and they're headed right at the boat, right? And I just thought of the Princess Bride. Those are the shrieking eels. Now, this is interesting. The shrieking eels, they never said that they're electric. But I find pictures of people presenting the shrieking eels as being electric eels. That's not said in the movie. It says the shrieking eels, and this is a t-shirt that people have made, and it shows a dragon. But it's eel-like. It's an eel-like dragon. Eel-like or worm-like dragons represent plasma, right? And they're shrieking because that's what electricity does, especially in massive quantities and high power electricity, is it screams, it shrieks, it moans, it makes all kinds of sounds, right? And he says they don't come this far north. So one, they're far north right now. He just told you. He just admitted it, right? And two, the electric eels or the electric plasma or whatever it is doesn't go that far north. There's something that is repelling the shrieking eels or the plasma that's headed towards them, right? There's something at the North Pole that repels plasma. Magnets repel plasma. Interesting, right? All right, so we go back to here, and Jacob is like, man, you just saved my life. I thought monsters were all bad, but you're clearly awesome. I promise I'm never going to hunt monsters again. So he takes his beam, takes his pole, and he goes, no more monster hunting. But he can't quite break it. He tries to snap it over his knee to make a point, but it doesn't break. Why did they put that in there? Just to be funny? Or is it symbolic? Because he can't break that pole. That pole represents the blue beams that are shooting up. And if you have blue beams shooting up, then you will have a red sky. They coexist. They come hand in hand. It's a package deal. Red sky, blue beams shooting up. Blue beams retract, blue sky comes out. Right? So if he breaks that, he's basically killing the red bluster, symbolically, right? So he can't break that pole quite yet until we're ready for that electromagnetic shift. All right, so the red bluster looks over a hill and sees the military ship that's out to kill it, and he is instantly attracted to it, right? Any of these big ships, right? These especially this one, he's attracted to it, and here's why. He represents plasma. He represents the red plasma in the sky, an electromagnetic phenomenon, not a horned actual physical monster, although there are those, right? He also represents plasma itself. And he's attracted to these ships, and many times plasma would go and be attracted to these types of sailing ships, and people didn't know what it was, so they said that they were being attacked by serpents or worms or eels or monsters or whatever it may be, right? This is called in our day today St. Elmo's fire. They say that it's a corona discharge commonly observed along the wingtips of like airplanes, windshields, and the nose of flying down airplanes that are in thunderstorms. So what happens is plasma builds up right at the tips of like the masts of the ships and stuff, right? And if you have a lot of it, I assume it would be more snake-like and actually move about and look like ghosts and stuff like that too, which oftentimes they reported that there was ghosts on the ship, but it's not. It's St. Elmo's fire, right? Which has nothing to do with Sesame Street. Or does it? Anyways, so St. Elmo's fire is just plasma, right? When you see these plasma snakes, this is an example of a plane that has St. Elmo's fire. And plasma forms all the way around the plane. This is what it looks like when you're in the cockpit and you have electricity that is wrapping around and licking the plane back and forth. If you had no idea about modern technology and you saw that, wouldn't that look like a dragon or a centipede or a, some kind of weird split tongue that's licking you or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, think of all the things that you would tell people if you had no idea what that was. You would describe it in the best ways possible, right? Or the best ways that you can with what you're already familiar with. So the captain says, now is the reckoning, right? Now, reckoning means to like recount something, right? To make sure that you have it all there, to make sure it's all there, to make sure you have the story straight. And it's also akin to thinking or rethinking things. Now is the reckoning for all who've been lost. Well, that's you, audience. That's all of us, okay? That's all of us in this world that we're in today. Lost. We're the lost generation. We're the lost children of the world, right? We have lost our history. We've lost our identity. We've lost our sense of purpose. We've lost all accounts of what actually has happened and how that got us to where we are today. We have no idea where we're going in the future because our past has been forgotten. It's obliterated. So now is the time of reckoning. Now is the time to recount those ancient tales, those ancient myths and legends that talk about Fantazoids and otherworldly great beasts and creatures and monsters of old. For all who've been lost, I strike at thee, devil. And he shoots out his spear, his huge, gigantic spear, towards the red bluster, right? So symbolically, this is like, one of the beams of the earth shooting up at the sky, basically. Hits it, boom, red bluster goes down. There's the hand of God. Let's zoom in there. See that? It's got a dragon that's coiled around, wrapped around like a snake, right? This is how dragons were originally portrayed, just so you know, okay? All they had was a mouth on the front, and they were called worms. They were not called dragons. And this one has an arrow all the way through it to tell you that this is plasma in a straight line, basically. But yeah, dragons started off as worms. They did not have arms. They did not have legs. They did not have wings. They did not have anything. They were just plasma. They were worms in the sky. They were snakes in the sky, right? That's the best way people could describe it. So then when people started drawing them like that, they started trying to figure out like, well, wait a minute, what happens if you see one on the ground? So they started adding stuff to it and personifying it so that they could better understand it and make sense of it. All right, so they take the red bluster, drag it away. And he says, he's talking to the red bluster who he's just caught. And he says, don't fight. You'll make the poison flow faster. Now, I believe that esoterically, this is a little breadcrumb for us. I think that many times the movies in Hollywood, they drop little hints, little survival hints to us who are going to remember these types of weird, strange things. And we're going to take them with us into the age to come, right? One of these little tips is don't fight. You'll make the poison flow faster. So in the world we live in today, I know there's a lot of people who are tempted to fight the system, to fight the world, to fight against all the stuff that's happening or whatnot. But in the world to come, there's what I call plasma possession, which means that people's soul, their spirit energy, becomes overly amplified to the point where they almost cannot control themselves, or they cannot control themselves. They become slaves to the will of the plasma, which has a will of its own. And if you fight, you'll make the poison flow faster, right? If you fight, if you become aggressive, if you turn to those types of ways, that's the same ways that the red plasma is going to do when it comes into this world. It's going to destroy things. It's going to kill and destroy and clean house, right? So if you have something along the same lines, like attracts like, you're going to get plasma possessed and turn into a killer. Basically, it's how it's portrayed in the media. And in Hollywood and stuff. So that's when you need to think of your happy thought, okay? Instead of getting angry, instead of, if you find yourself getting that frustrated or overcome with like an overwhelming sense of like anger or hatred or even you might call it righteous justice or righteous indignation or something, it's time to calm down and find your happy thought, basically, which is something that's really simple, but I think it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. But find your happy thought, because that's a peace of mind that you're going to need in order to fight those energies. All right, so they get to the castle. Check out this castle, the White Castle. Look at this castle. Let's zoom into this real quick. I want to teach some stuff about electromagnetics and architecture. Now, they drew this castle for a particular epoch, for a particular age, right? In this age, whatever one is being shown to us, what they're trying to do by making these huge spirals and these spikes that are shooting up out of the castle, which you see quite often. There is a dome right there in the front, but mostly it's surrounded by spikes. So I'm going to address those first. Spikes are like lightning rods, and they act as lightning rods if the metal is a conductor of electricity. This looks like gold, so I'm going to imagine, since it's royalty, that these spikes are all gold. That means it's highly conductive of electricity. They're lightning rods. Let me clear up a misconception. These are not designed to attract lightning, not whatsoever. Their design is to neutralize lightning so that there are less lightning strikes hitting that building right there. They don't want electricity to hit here. They don't want it to hit here. They don't want it to hit here or any of these places where you see these huge rods or spikes or whatever, right? And let me show you an example of that, right? Now, the reason that we think that lightning rods are designed to attract the lightning and redirect it into the ground is because they added something to the lightning rod, which is a grounder or a ground, right? They stretched out the lightning rod or added cables or wires or whatever. And then they touch that to the ground. That's a secondary piece to a lightning rod. A lightning rod actually makes it so that lightning is less likely to hit. Not to try to get lightning to hit, right? But if it does hit, they have a ground attached to it so that it can redirect the flow and they can control where it goes when it hits. So its purpose is twofold. Here's an example from a sweet YouTube video I found, really old one, where this guy is talking about electricity and how it works. This ball right here generates a strong electrical current. If he did not have this nail, he's pointing the nail at it and he says, I can take this nail and I can come close to this, right? But he doesn't get shocked. He says, nothing. I don't feel anything. There's nothing there. And it's because it's dispersing the electrical field and it's keeping lightning from hitting him. If he dropped that nail, he would get shocked instantly, right? But the nail is actually preventing the lightning from striking or the electricity from striking. And he says, this is what's happening on your house when you have a lightning rod. It's actually just equalizing everything, right? I'm going to come back to the dome structure and what that does here in a minute. So here you can see the two witnesses on either side of the North Pole symbolism there. Oh, also, just a little quick one there. There's an anchor at the bottom. There's a crown at the top indicating rulership, right? It's got three main spikes, which are, well, the word crown is directly related to the word crow, right? Which we learned means dark mountain. So symbolically, this has three dark mountains on the top. The North Pole right there in the middle. They're indicating that this is our crown or we are the rulers of the mountains, etc. And then there's an anchor at the bottom, which means this is where we landed at the North Pole. This is where we dropped in. All right, next up. Oh, that same symbol, right? So the little girl, Maisley, or whatever her name is, she looks up, she sees the symbol of the royalty. This is the symbol in the movie of the system in our world today with presidents and kings and queens and all that craziness, right? She goes to one of her books, right? One of her history books, and she sees the symbol there. She's like, oh my God. She's starting to put things together. She grabs another book off the shelf. Boom, symbol of royalty on the back right there. Goes to another book. It says the dark times, triumph over the beasts, and it's written by and produced by the people in charge of this world. Their symbol is all over the place, which means they're in control of what history says, of the truth, of what people see and how they interpret things. And she says it was them. All right, so the doors open, and that takes us to the castle with all the little lightning rods all over it, etc. Oh, why would they want to divert that much lightning? Why would they care that much about lightning, right? Because this is the time when the world was energetically amplified. There was energy, ether, whatever you want to call it, all over the place just above you, right? So people had to be very cautious in how they made their buildings so that, one, they wouldn't get electrocuted, and two, so that they can use that electricity, so that they could use and harness that power. So here's some examples of like Gothic type architecture, or architecture of the gods, you could say. Same thing. Very pointy, very spiky. But then we have the opposite of that, which is the domes. If you look at these two types of structures, you can see that they were using these shapes to manipulate the flow of electricity above their buildings, right? Sometimes, as in the case with domes, it attracts lightning. It attracts electricity. Same guy holding onto a metal sphere. He says, this doorknob that I'm holding onto, I'm going to show you what happens when I put this close to this electrical thing. Bzz, zap, boom, zap. I only took 2 pictures, but this dude was, you could tell he's getting struck by lightning all over the place. And that's when he had this little doorknob looking thing, which is a dome, basically, a dome shape. Metallic conductor that's dome shaped attracts electricity. And therefore, all of the architecture that you see that is all domed is designed to pull energy into it, or onto it, I should say, right? Or around it, or whatever. And then those spikes are actually designed to keep the electricity away. And sometimes they use them in tandem, right? Sometimes they'll have like 4 spikes and then like a big dome in the middle, because they don't want it to hit around the outside. If it's going to hit in that area, it's going to hit, boom, right where that dome is. All right, so they bring in the great sea beast into this sort of central watery lake island deal that they have there. And he's about to kill the sea beast, the captain is. And Jacob's like, I can't let you do it, man. Like, that thing saved my life. That thing is clearly no threat. It didn't do anything wrong. I can't let you just murder it. You know what I mean? And he says, you dishonor all the hunters who came before you. So now what he's trying to do, even though Jacob, who was once in the system and one of its greatest front runners, right? The system, the kings, the queens, they love this dude. He's a great monster hunter. He's destined to take control of the ship and be the next captain, etc. He has a change of heart. He's like, I don't think this is right. So this guy's trying to use history the way it's been taught by the royals to convince him otherwise. He's trying to peer pressure him, basically saying, oh, well, this is how it's always been done. Maybe it's time for a change. And then what died heroes? But you can be a hero and still be wrong. Good point. Words well spoken. All right, so the red bluster wakes up. Boom, we've got the statue here with the 2 witnesses on either side and the beam shooting up. This is the sky or whatnot, the red sky. He's waking up. He's actually disoriented, but everyone thinks that he's like trying to attack and break everything. They brought him into the middle of their city, and he's accidentally breaking stuff just by moving around. So everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God. He sees the captain who wants to kill him, and the red bluster gets pissed, and he's about to eat him alive, right? So he growls at him, rah, opens up his mouth wide like a giant puppet, and stops because the little girl is standing between him and his murder that he's about to commit, right? So it's a child. It's a child that saves us all. It's a childlike mentality that returns us to a place of sensibility in an insane world. We need to have more of a childlike mentality, in my opinion. I need to, and I'm working on that. She says, if you do this, it never ends, right? If we keep up the cycle of killing and killing and killing, it never is going to end. Right? Because people, if you kill, there's going to be more procreation, etc., and the world's going to get out of control. How about we learn to live together, right? With our differences. Instead of mixing up together and stuff, like we learn to live together with those differences that we have. So he's pissed off, he growls, but then Jacob stands up. He's got the pike or the staff or whatever, and he's trying to tell him, hey, this monster hunting business is done. So he says, no more monster hunting. And then finally he snaps it in half over his knee, which is an indicator symbolically that there's going to be a polarity shift in the world. Okay, so the monster growls and they're on top of it riding the Fantazoid. Once again, the king and queen say impossible, right? This is the mentality of the world that we have. This is the left brain speaking. This is the ends justify the means. This is a calculator kind of a brain, right? They say, oh, that's impossible. There's no way that this could happen, right? Because it goes against the history that they're writing, basically. That's why it's impossible. But clearly you can see it's not impossible, right? So Maisie addresses the audience, which is us, by the way. And she says, our books, our history is a lie. A story told by them, the monarchy. The kings and queens, the rulers of the world. Of course the story's told by them. It will, if it's told by them, it's going to fit their agenda, don't you think? And it seems like their agenda is to rule. For generations, they've taught us to hate the beasts. They're talking to us, right? So even in the modern world today, you're taught to hate vampires, werewolves, monsters of any sort, any shape, any form. You're basically taught that they're all evil, that they're all bad, that they're all out to get us, that we need to kill them, that if aliens come, we need to point our guns up at the skies and immediately try to shoot them because they're going to take over the world. There's some truth to that because they do. There is an invasion, there is an infestation, I guess you could call it, or an introduction of new life into this world. But, you know, how we respond to that is what it becomes. And they sent out hunters to destroy the Fantazoids. And the beasts learned to fear us and to hate us. That's not just Fantazoids. That's not just monsters. That's animals. Okay? The animals of this world once got along with us. Every single one of them. Lions, tigers, bears, oh my. We're all great. Okay? But then something changed. And the animals feared mankind. Mankind was doing something they shouldn't have been. A hunger developed and they started eating the animals, which that's, I mean, to an animal that used to be friends with humans, that's the same as, you know, all of a sudden cannibalism is just accepted and normal and you're not a cannibal. That's exactly how the animals felt. How would you feel if all of a sudden all of the earth and everyone in the world became cannibalistic for the most part? That is something I imagine how many animals feel about humans, and I'm sure it breaks their hearts because they probably remember. I'm speculating for the animals, but they probably could remember a time, because I can remember a time. They could probably remember a time when they got along with us, when we were great friends. But now we eat them. Doesn't that just sound messed up? All right, back to the king and the queen. They say, "Who are you to malign your king and queen with such falsehoods?" This is, I want to smack that dude. You know what I mean? This is the kind of garbage that rules our world today, okay? Who are you, first of all? What do you mean, ooh, man, I'm getting pissed off at the cartoon right now. What do you mean, who am I? What do you mean, who the fudge are you, bro? You're just some fat dude in a fucking, excuse my language, this is pissing me off. I'm so sorry. He's some dude wearing a hat and a cape. That's all you are, right? Without the clothes, like there's no authority, basically. You're just some human, some random dude. Right? You're not special. You're not blessed. You're not born of the gods. You're not anything incredible. You're nothing better than I am or the rest or any of the rest of us. We were born on earth. This is our land, not theirs. Who are you? That's the kind of way that they put their nose up to you and talk down to you. And I hate that kind of mentality. He says, "You have no right to speak." I have every right to speak. We have every right to speak. And what they want to do is silence you and keep you quiet and make it so that the majority, which is all of us, don't allow our voice to be heard. Not our voices, our voice to be heard. She says, "I come from a long line of hunters that died your great death." Right? They're all the people who are in charge and have billions of dollars and just chill on vacation every single day of their lives and pretend to do like a minute's worth of work every year for the great glory of the fucking people. I'm sorry. I shouldn't curse. For the glory of the people or for the world or for all of our betterment or for your safety. That's the biggest nasty. I can't stand it. Anyways, you get the point, right? They try to make it sound like, oh, it's good to be a slave. Yeah, you guys are all doing honorable stuff out there. Thank you, slaves. You're all doing great work. While they do nothing. While they do zero. While they get all of our energy, all of our currency, all of our time, all of our effort, all of our belongings. And we love it. Collectively, in general, humanity loves it. They eat it up. They have contests who could be the best slave. You know what I mean? It's disgusting to me. With every lie, their empire grew. This is your history. Now, this lot stands on the same perch and tells the same lies. There is a king in the world. Basically, the king of the world. Like, okay, right? Everyone knows that the Queen of England died recently. I don't care. I'm not happy about it. I'm not sad about it. I don't care. I'm far removed from England. I don't care about England's politics or anything. I also don't care about America's politics whatsoever. I don't talk about it. I don't want to hear about it because I don't believe in it, because that's just some dude to me. I don't call him the president. I don't say, yes, your honor. I don't do all that garbage. They're just people, right? They're people. They're not just people. They're people. And so am I. And that means we're equals on the playing field, on the earth. So what she's saying is, hey, she's knocking on your smartphone right now, or your TV, or whatever tablet or whatever you're using to watch me right now. And this little cartoon character is saying, you have kings, you have queens, you have rulers, you have priests, you have judges, you have presidents. This lot stands on the same perch as the ones of old and tells the same lies. And you all go to work. And you all clap. And you all say thank you when they give you a day off of your slavery. And it makes me sick for you, actually. It makes me sick, but it also I get extra sick for all those people who are not sickened by it. It's disgusting. She says, let it end. Let it end. It's in your hands. Viewers, it's up to you. It's up to us. We are the majority. Turn the tables around. This woman says, listen to the child. We need to listen with a childlike mindset, right? It's simple. The truth is simple. The truth has always been right there in plain sight. We've been blind. We've blinded ourselves. And then this woman, whoever she is, some chick, I care less if she has a crown and her hair's all nice and she's got a robe or a cape or whatever. She's some chick to me. She's just some girl with the attitude. With a bad attitude, right? See, that's how I judge people. Like, are they by their actions, by their tone, by their manners? Are they good? Are they adding to, or are they taking away? She says, your queen demands it. Shoot the beast. Shoot it. And then basically she's saying, because I said so. I want this to happen. So you do it because I am your queen. No, that's not how that works. Okay. I'm sorry, but they say that this is the modern age and there's still kings and queens. I'm skipping that one. All right. So she's telling them to shoot the red bluster, and they're all hesitating because the kid makes a really good point. And now you've got the majority, which is the crowd, saying, hey, listen to her. She's making a good point. So now the people who are directly working for the king, the queen, the president, whoever you want to call them, right? Now they're hesitating, which is the time to take action, to say, don't hesitate, bro, right? So this guy's like, General, shouldn't we fire? And this general, she's thinking about it. She's like, nah, that's not a good idea. Because she is saying, is thinking all the people have changed their minds. So do I go against all of the people who I have to go home to at the end of the day and be amongst? Or do I do my job and listen to what I've been ordered to do, which is in a moral order from the royalty or the presidency or whatever you want to call it, right? So this person's like, nah, I'm good. So what happens to the king and the queen? They turn tail. This dude and this chick, okay, I give them zero respect, zero honor, zero any of that garbage just because of the clothing that they wear or just because of where they were born or who they're related to. I don't care. That means zero to me personally, right? I don't get starstruck. I don't do any of that. They take off. They run like a couple of freaking cowards because that's what they are at the core. They don't know how to fight. They don't know how to defend themselves. They don't know how to fucking cook. Excuse my language, but they don't know how to do anything. You know why? You provide it to them. All of it. Their comfort, their safety, their food, their beds, their pillows, their gold, all of it is provided and given to them by us. So what happens when we take all that away? They're cowards. They run. They have zero power. Nothing. All they can do is say, you need to do this. And then you just say, no. No, I actually don't. And you just don't. You don't do what they tell you to do. And then they get all freaked out and they don't know what to do because now they don't have that same fear, that little spell that's been placed into so many people's minds that keeps you captive. All you have to do is just do what you want to do instead of doing what you're told to do. And I support that. Anyways, let's get back to the Captain Crow. Captain Crow, he picks up his sword, which is a weapon of violence, drops it down onto the ground. This is a prophecy. In the Bible, it says that the day will come when people will beat their swords into plowshares, that swords will be useless because peace has been restored to our world. When those blue beams fill the world with vitality and energy and life and spirit, right? It promotes kindness because we tend to sense one another. We become way more empathetic and more in tune with our chakras and feelings and stuff. But violence is not necessary to most of the world because we have a certain wisdom that has been given to us. So swords are now used for like tools instead of weapons, basically. So he drops his sword, and this is symbolic of a transition. She says, and it says, and with that, the world began to change. And that's when the world will start to change. You'll start to see all of these things happen. The world starts to change. And it says, no ship would ever sail the Dregmor again, and the mysteries beyond would remain undisturbed. Now, reverse the Dregmor, right? If the Dregmor represents the sea just outside of that current that's at the North Pole, right? No one is going back to the North Pole. Seems like there was an accord. Seems like there was a deal, some sort of agreement. There's something in effect. Otherwise, you would have people going up there, right? But there's something preventing us from exploring. All of you, many of you are explorers at heart, right? Maybe you like to just explore, whatever, your local forests, your local areas, strange buildings and stuff like that. But ultimately you go back home. And many of you have the heart that says, I shouldn't be just going back home and going on these little mini adventures and then still stuck in my job, still stuck in my apartment, still stuck in whatever. I have the heart of an explorer. I shouldn't be stuck here. I should be free to go places and sleep along the way and live off of the earth itself. Some people know what I'm talking about. But anyways, my point is they don't go back to the North Pole. It's off limits. And that's what they say. I'm telling you it's not off limits. Okay, I give you permission. You want to go? Absolutely. You tell them JayDreamerZ sent you, right? You know what I mean? Like, just, that's fine with me. Go ahead. You have my permission. If you need permission and you're very permission minded, like most people in this world are, need to be instructed and told, I'm telling you, go for it. Go to North Pole, right? I mean, be wise if you're going to go. I'll give you all kinds of tips, right? You don't want to just, put yourself in danger purposefully when you don't have to. So you want to go somewhere. You want to do something? Do it. Stop waiting for the right time and the right moment. When you feel like doing it is the right time, typically, right? That's called the law of the land. Now, does that mean people can do bad things or make poor decisions? Yeah, but that's up to them to do that. It's not up to you to stop them unless they're infringing upon your peace and your life. Then you have your freedom of choice to respond how you like to. That's called the law of the land. The movie ends with the horn of the red bluster eclipsing the sun. Interesting. So the sun goes dark right at the end and then they just fade out. And she says, I'm going to live a great life. And that's how the movie ends. That's how I would like this live stream to end. It's not over. We got a couple more slides here. I want to show you a couple more things, but I want you to live a great life. Just living, just breathe, waking up and your body is working. That's not living. That's not being alive. Okay. Being alive means there is an element of risk. Right? There's an element of chance. There is danger. There is something worth living for. Not just cereal in the morning and work in the afternoon and game shows at night or whatever. And it's the same thing over and over and over, all while everything that you do during that day is going to somebody else. That's not living. Your power is still there and you have a lot of potential. And by you, I mean we. Now, check this out. At the end of the credits, it says, this motion picture is protected under the laws of the United States and unauthorized duplication, distribution, or exhibition may result in civil liability and criminal prosecution. The characters and events depicted in this program are fictitious. No depiction of actual persona or persons or events is intended. and then they stamp it with these images up here, just like the girl, right? Just like the girl in the movie sees the symbols and sees the little stamps that are being given to us. And she's like, wow, these people wrote all this, but it's lies. So imagine when they put their stamps on real movies and real, you know, presentations. And then they say things like the characters and events are totally fictitious and it's unintentional if they happen to resemble the apocalypse or whatever, right? Okay, right on. Okay, USA. Okay, Hollywood. Anyways, here's an example. They end the movie with this picture of this huge sea beast Fantazoid creature attacking a ship, right? Which reminds me, right, that, like I said, many things will grow to gigantic sizes. This is an example of what a Fantazoid could turn into. Those things that are already in our world that seem monstrous to us only when we get close to them. This is called a hydrothermal vent worm or a hydrothermal worm, right? And then somebody else online took the same image of a microscopic creature and blew it up to fantastic proportions, and it looks strikingly similar to many of our sea beasts in our movie that we just watched, right? There are these things that lie on the ocean floors, and one day our world changes. Everything grows, it gets much bigger, and produces beasts of the sea, monsters of old, men of renown, heroes, the time of magic. And that's what this movie is reminding us of. I hope that you guys had a good time breaking down Sea Beast. Sorry, I look a little worn down and tired lately. I'm pretty tired. I've been up all night, you know, working and stuff. But yeah, it's good to hang out with all of you. I'm going to let you all go. It's my time to be a dad. That's what I'm most proud of in my life, is watching a little tiny person grow and watching them mess up and watching them, you know, have feelings and emotions and stuff. I want to give my son a shout out, right? For whenever he happens to see this. There was many times, right, when I'm so proud of him, but there was these friends that he has, and they all had captured a big frog, like a huge toad. And they were sort of tormenting it and everything. And they had caught it because they wanted to catch it. And that sounded appealing to my son. So he supported catching the frog. But then they started throwing rocks at it and stuff. And he came inside crying. Just crying. He couldn't breathe. You know, one of those kind of really good hard cries. And he was so sad. And he told me the story of how they were hurting the frog and stuff. So you know what I did? I said, get your shoes on right now, my little guy. We're going to go save that frog, because that's not right. I know you wanted to have a little frog friend, right? But you don't have to keep it on a leash to make it your friend. It's actually more your friend if you let it go. You want to go let that frog go with me? And he's like, yeah. And he stopped crying. So we went outside. I scooped up that frog, took it away from his buddies, and we went off to the side to a little local creek. And I had my son watch as we set this frog free. Anyways, I don't know why. It just reminded me of it. It's a good memory. So until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
So hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be easier for me
vast multiverse.
Your powers collide.